Okay, thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. And special thanks to Senators Murray, our ranking member on appropriations, Merkley on budget, and Senator Hassan, your ranking member on something.
JEC.
JEC. So thank you for coming. Last night, President Trump plunged the country into chaos, a cruel, nasty, and illegal chaos. Without a shred of warning, the Trump administration announced a halt to virtually all federal grants and loans across the country. In an instant, with no precedent, no justification, no legal grounds, Donald Trump has shut off billions, perhaps trillions of dollars that help American families every single day. It's cruel. It's reckless. And this money supports states and cities, school boards, hospitals, small businesses, families, firefighters, police officers, fighting fentanyl. So many things just, boom, cut. Law enforcement, aid to the elderly, support for veterans. This decision is lawless, it's destructive, it's dangerous, it's cruel, it's illegal, and it's unconstitutional. Donald Trump has done a lot of bad things in the last week, but nothing's worse than this. It is nothing less than Project 2025 by another name. Maybe remember when Project 2025 came out during the campaign? Somehow the public found out about it. 60% of the people knew what it was, and they hated it. And yet this is the same thing in another name. Same types of slashes and things that hurt people. And who are they putting in charge? The chief to implement it. So you know what they're up to, and you know the American people hate it. People are scrambling in all of our states to figure out what it means. I've gotten hundreds of calls from everybody. Head Start, hospitals, firefighters. What does this mean? What does this mean? People are worried. People are in a panic about it. And many of our groups that get the money, whether they be governments or businesses or nonprofits, they have to make mortgage payments, they have to pay their staff, they have to keep operations running. What do you think when you've heard the funding is cut? So just about any organization, whether it's a school, a state, a police department, fire, hospital, that depends on federal grant money to run its day-to-day operations is now in danger. This morning, thanks to Donald Trump, health care for seniors and veterans is at risk. Thanks to Donald Trump, mass transit and workers getting to and from work will have a difficult time. Thanks to Donald Trump, there's new taxes for Americans everywhere, a new tax on active military duty and spouses. They totally eliminate the child tax credit, and they tax Social Security benefits. Hospitals and community health centers can't draw down any of their funds. They need it every day, to deal with people who have emergencies at hospitals. Head Start programs in New York have already begun to feel the impact. They're unable to access any funds. Some of them owe rent checks today. They don't have the money. This is cruel, and it affects everything everywhere. Republicans are quite literally defunding the police. And on all these things, we will not stand idly by. The blast radius of this terrible, unconstitutional, and illegal decision is virtually limitless. Its impacts are going to be felt over and over and over again by families, and we are already in touch with families and people throughout the country to mobilize them against this cruelty, this blatant assault on Americans. And American families should make no mistake, the money's been taken from them, will be spent. That money will be spent, but not on them, on the people at the very top who want tax cuts. It's cruelty and lawless, as I said. Does this cruel action hold down the price of your groceries? No, it'll probably raise it. Just yesterday, even before they did this, I was in upstate New York talking about funding to stop the scourge of bird flu because eggs are $6. You hold back the funding that farmers need to do that, price will go up higher. That's just one small instance of how much this affects things. So, no matter how much he believed, the President does not have the authority to ignore the law. I spoke to Tish James, our Attorney General in New York, and she is the head of the Attorneys General Association. They're filing a suit, and we're going to be joining them in other legal action. But it's not just going to be legal action. There's going to be action everywhere. Pressure on Republican House and Senate members to see if they support this stuff. Mobilization of people across the board, because this cannot stand. It's just awful. Patty. Got this.
Well, thank you. You know, every one of us in this building owes a huge debt of gratitude to our Capitol Police. Considering all the sacrifice they make to keep us safe, we all should be able to say with one voice that if you violently assault a Capitol Police officer, you should not get a pardon, and you should not get off scot-free. I'm going to have a lot more to say on the floor later today, but from Trump pardoning violent insurrectionists to issuing blatantly unconstitutional executive orders to lawlessly blocking bipartisan funding. We've got a lot of ground to cover. And today I want to talk about the OMB guidance the Trump administration issued in the dead of night. In a brazen and illegal move, the Trump administration is working to freeze huge chunks of federal funding passed into law by Republicans and Democrats alike. Now, not even 24 hours later, they are issuing new guidance, trying to clean up the massive mess they've made, saying, wait, we don't actually know what we're doing. But they are still leaving needless uncertainty about what actually is happening, and they are still, let me make that clear, still withholding approved funding all across the government. Meanwhile, the chaos is already hurting people, creating confusion and causing devastating delays. Where do we start here? There are a lot of urgent questions, but precious few answers, and the answers keep changing. What about grants for public safety, grants for our firefighters, or that prevent violence against women? Those aren't direct to individuals. Are they still halted? Healthcare. What about the community health centers that millions rely on, including in our rural areas? Money fighting the opioid crisis. Grants that go to states, communities, and nonprofits. Are they stopping funding for addiction treatment and prevention? Clinical studies. Scientists at the University of Washington and Washington State University are deeply alarmed. This is not theoretical. Research projects will collapse. Staff will be furloughed or laid off. Tribes in my state are deeply alarmed that they will see severe cuts across healthcare, education, law enforcement, housing, practically every aspect of daily life on Indian land. And of course, what about disaster relief that could be derailed? In eastern Washington, in my home state, $44 million to help Spokane County rebuild after wildfires. Money that was announced weeks ago, still on pause. Last week, Trump visited communities in North Carolina and California, reeling from disaster. Now he's throwing the aid those communities need into chaos. Schools that need Title I payments are worried they may not get the funds that Congress has allocated and voted on. Suddenly, we now don't know how will Meals on Wheels feed seniors who depend on them. What does this mean for our homeless veterans we are working to get housed? Entire budgets and payrolls across the country are carefully hinging on these resources. We're talking about small towns, cities, rural America, school districts, universities, and much more. And look, saying, oh, just kidding, not even 24 hours later, is not a solution. You can't pretend you had no idea that this would cause chaos despite all the warnings. That is not believable. and even if it was true, not a good reason for all the damage that's been caused. Even despite what we've heard from the administration in the last hour, they are still promising to illegally withhold funding owed to all of our states. That basic truth has not changed. So I am urging my fellow Republicans to open your eyes to just how bad this is and will be for your states and your communities, and speak out. I know reports say the White House is trying to silence members who've done that. Stand up. We're talking about your constituents. And specifically, I urge my Republican colleagues on the Senate Budget Committee to vote against Russ Vought's nomination. Republicans should not advance this nomination out of committee until the Trump administration follows the law. And I'm warning the Trump administration, the law is the law. You need to reverse course, follow the requirements of the law, ensure the nation's spending laws are implemented as Congress intended, and avoid this pointless, damaging chaos.
I want people, before we start, just look at this chart. These are just a few. They're defunding the police. Republicans are defunding the police. President Trump is in this proposal. Police and firefighter funding in this action proposal. Right. Health care and action, housing for seniors, they've cut. They've cut. Funding for hospitals and community health centers, cut. They depend on this money day to day. Head Start programs, school meal programs, tax relief for families, veterans, and retirement. And that's just a scintilla, a small, tiny bit of what they're doing.
This is not a proposal. This is what they did.
This is what they've done.
Yep. Jeff.
We are in the midst of a sweeping authoritarian power grab that has never been witnessed in the lifetime of anyone standing here right now. The Inspector Generals being fired. Memos going out telling government workers to spy on government workers to see if anyone is overly sympathetic to the idea of diversity. And now we have Trump saying, I'm going to steal the power of the purse allocated in the Constitution to the House and Senate, to Congress, and I'm going to take it for myself. I don't care what's been authorized or obligated in contracts. I'm going to decide what funds get spent and which ones don't. That is a constitutional crisis. Now, the architect of this sweeping authoritarian power grab is Russell Vogt. He is very experienced. He was director of Office of Management Budget before. He ran a think tank where he advocated for the ideas that were in Project 2025. Then he became the architect of Project 2025. And then in the nomination process, he said he has a three-part plan. He laid out the first part, an attack on America's families. This is a great betrayal of what Trump ran on. Part two, run up a massive deficit of trillions of dollars. Part three, give massive tax breaks to the richest people in America. Well, last night, part one, the attack on American families, went into full gear. And that's what we're facing right now. So, we, the Senate Democrats, are standing in the way of this sweeping power grab and saying no. Saying it is not acceptable, saying it is cannot be business as usual. We are calling upon our Republican colleagues to join us, because this isn't D's versus ours. This is not blue versus red. This is an imperial authoritarian president attacking the powers of Congress allocated in the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, this power that architect of this sweeping imperial authoritarian takeover, Russell Vogt, he says he doesn't care. He doesn't care that we had the 1974 Impoundment Control Act. He doesn't care that the Supreme Court found it unconstitutional. He said the president disagrees that it's unconstitutional for the president to grab the power of the purse, and that he agrees with the president and that he's going to do it. Well, last night we found out he is doing it, and that's why he has become the most dangerous man, and we must stand together to make sure that this sweeping authoritarian effort is stopped. From the firing of the IGs to government workers being called to spy on each other and then fired, to this grab of the power of the purse.
Senator Hassan.
Well, thanks, everybody, for being here. Look, America has endured for almost 250 years as the world's greatest democracy and greatest nation because we believe that no one is above the law. Because up until now, our leaders have never confused themselves with kings. But President Trump has been relentlessly attacking those principles of our free government since the moment he finished his inaugural address. The president began by pardoning violent criminals who assaulted police officers and tried to overthrow our free and fair election. And then late Friday night, President Trump illegally attempted to fire at least 17 inspectors general, which, if successful, will make our government less efficient. It means that the government will waste more taxpayer money. And the absence of inspector generals also will allow big corporations to rip off the American people, especially through some of the government contracts that they hold. And now, as if to test the limits of our democracy, as if to exploit what President Trump believes is the weakness of the Republican Senate caucus, and to test our society's capacity for outrage and chaos, the president is unilaterally freezing all federal grants. These are vital federal funds, as you have heard. This act is illegal. The president is required to spend the money appropriated by Congress. The Supreme Court has ruled that the Impoundment Control Act, which prevents a president from unilaterally holding back funds, the Supreme Court has ruled that that is constitutional. Equally as important, and perhaps more important, is that this action will hurt people all across the country. President Trump's order defunds police departments even as law enforcement officers are trying to keep us safe. It imperils disaster relief as fires rage. It halts cancer research as we strive for cures. And it shuts down shelters for homeless veterans in the cold of winter. The White House claims, or tried to claim, that Medicaid isn't impacted, but let's be clear, we are hearing from Medicaid offices all across the country that they are right now locked out of the critical Medicaid computer portal that allows them to draw down funds. They are locked out of these federal reimbursement systems, which in practice means that federal funds can be halted or rejected. New Hampshire law enforcement agencies have told my office that the freeze of federal funding may force them to rescind job offers, meaning fewer cops on the streets. A New Hampshire organization that helps domestic violence survivors also told my office that it is now locked out of federal funding systems, which will significantly impact the crisis centers it runs for women. These are concerted and insidious actions. Senator Merkley talked about Russ Vought. Russ Vought is the ultimate Washington insider, and he was hired by Donald Trump, and he faces our confirmation vote. He was hired by Donald Trump to do this work, using his insider knowledge in a way that will hurt millions of people, small businesses across our country, and send shockwaves through our economy. Let's be clear, this money is not the president's to freeze or take away. It was appropriated by Congress, and it belongs to the American people. To my Republican colleagues, I suggest that you have to decide what bridge it is too far. To examine if you would tolerate these authoritarian acts and precedents were the president not of your own political party. The president would, of course, be better served spending his energies attacking high prices, not life-saving grants, not the people's watchdogs, and above all, not the rule of law. We cannot let America become a place where our leaders hold back the people's funds by day and purge the people's watchdogs by night. Not here, not in a democracy like ours, not ever. Thank you.
Let me just say one thing, folks. Any Republican senator who votes for Russell Vogt will bear on their shoulders all of these horrible, horrible cuts and actions. They have a chance to stop this. Let's see what they do. Yes.
Senator, I understand that you say that this is unlawful, and you say that it's unconstitutional. But for the American people, what practically can you do, aside from filing a lawsuit that could take weeks to adjudicate?
I think our Republican senators and congressmen are going to hear from their constituents from one end of the country to the other. They're going to hear from police departments and schools and cancer research clinics and fire departments and police officers. Everyone is really upset about this, and we're going to continue to put heat on them so that they will not vote for Vogt. Plain and simple. They're going to bear the consequences on their backs for what they have done to their constituents. Next.
Senator Schumer, in light of a dozen Jewish groups leaving X over what they call toxic speech, evil speech, do you have concerns about Elon Musk's gesture after the inauguration, also his speech to the AfD in Germany saying that Germany needs to move beyond guilt?
There shouldn't be anti-Semitism anywhere. Yes. Wait. Yes.
If I may. ICC is involved in investigating Russian crimes in Ukraine. Do you think any sanctions from the United States on ICC may undermine the efforts to bring Russia to justice?
One of the reasons that every Democrat but one voted against the ICC bill was not that we didn't want to make sure that we did everything we could to stop their anti-Semitic actions against Israel, but because we cared about Ukraine, we cared about Darfur, we cared about many other things, bad things that they were doing. Yes.
Your Republican counterpart suggested they were going to be in communication with the White House about the OMB thing to get some more clarity. Do you all anticipate some kind of communication directly to the OMB too?
We're going to communicate with everyone under the sun, and most importantly, with our constituents, and tell them, let your Republican senators know, let your Republican congressmen know that you hate this. They'll feel the heat. Thank you, everybody.
Have any of you spoken directly with organizations or states